So in this segment, we're going to discuss Sunak is cooked part 2, I think. I did part 1 last week. I might as well go for part 2. I wanted to release it a bit earlier than what I'm doing today, but we move. So a significant number of Tories are prepared to turn on Sunak if the local elections are a bloodbath. They have warned he will face a leadership contest if they lose their mayors in West Midlands and Teesside. I'm not sure which mayors they got in Teesside, but they have got one in Birmingham, and he's not happy with the Tory party as is. Number 10 is now ruling out holding a summer election, comes after an ally of Sunak threatened an earlier than expected vote if the Tory MPs turn against him. So he's going for the classic, if you try and get rid of me, I will get rid of everyone here, effectively by calling a general election. So that should be fun. This is from Robert Buckland, crying about the infighting.
40 Conservatives have submitted letters of no confidence in Rishi Sunak.
Well, I mean, only Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 22, has the numbers, Kay. I don't know.
Right.
The Tories keep saying, Tory rebels keep saying there are a few votes out, votes of no confidence out from causing a leadership contest. I don't think that's true.
Were to be the case, that would be shocking.
Well, look, I think that the time for sending letters has long passed, if it ever arose, frankly. We've had leadership elections. I don't think the public is interested in the Conservative Party navel-gazing. What the public expect and what they're getting from the Prime Minister and from the vast majority of Conservative colleagues, is an outward-facing, public-focused approach on issues like the economy, on health.
You've tanked the economy.
Health, on immigration.
You tanked the NHS.
Doesn't matter.
Immigration at record levels, and that's a problem. You guys say that's the thing you guys say is a problem.
To the people who send us to Westminster. That, if we get that focus right, then we can win.
What would you say to your colleagues who are trying to unseat the Prime Minister?
I would say that to try and do that in an election year would be an act of folly. Let's keep calm and carry on. We're turning the corner on the economy.
The economy is really not turning a corner. Yeah, we're going to be out of technical recession, but that's not really a big dub, is it?
Inflation's coming down, growth's coming back. We're seeing those...
Growth is not coming back.
Mortgage rates not rising as steeply as we feared. That's all...
Wait till Thursday to see what happens
well,
as far as that's
Yeah, the Bank of England have held the interest rate.
I agree with that, Kay, and that's why I don't pretend we're out of the woods, and I share, the anxieties of...
No, you don't. You're on £91,000 a year. You don't share anxieties with the average person.
People who I represent about these things.
Nah, you don't.
These things matter. That's what colleagues, I think, need to focus on. I think they are. Let's look at what people care about rather than worrying about...
The Tories don't care what people care about, not the average person.
I mean, a lot of people are saying he should have sacked Tom Tugendhat and Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Tom Tog on his hat. He's saying he's going to throw his name in the leadership contest, if there is one.
For making an intervention on defence spending, Andrew Bowie. For making an intervention on the decision to tax oil and gas. Like, he has lost cabinet collective responsibility. Some people are saying an authority within the party. I mean, he is on shaky ground, isn't he?
I mean, it doesn't look like collective responsibility has been lost. I mean, one or two ministers speaking out of turn can be dealt with by the chief whip.
Yeah, but that's collective responsibility. If ministers are not happy with defence spending, they are still responsible for it. That's how collective responsibility works. So it's either they resign or they're sacked because they've gone against the collective. That's how it works. So, this idea the whips can deal with it. No, it's for the Prime Minister to deal with.
Sure. Collective responsibility matters. I see it being enforced in this government. The Prime Minister...
Do you see it being enforced? I don't.
Has had notable successes. He's making progress on the economy, Beth. And we see health...
They need to do something about this point he keeps raising about doing stuff, the economy looking better. It's really not. It's really not. Tom Tog on his hat considered by Tory rebels as possible unity figure. The problem with Tugendhat is not a populist. Tugendhat is more a Cameron-type Tory, centre-right Tory. He'd be of the Sunak mould. So the idea that he could replace Sunak doesn't make sense. It's the same thing why I can't see Penny Mordaunt doing the same thing, to be honest with you. I think that's why they'll bet on Badenoch.
MPs of not just losing the general election later this year, but a devastating defeat from which it's hard for their party to recover. Conservative MPs see the same opinion polls that we see, and they suggest that the Conservatives are...
They can also carry out their own kind of polling as well if they want to.
...a long way behind the Labour Party. Now, you might say, well, the opinion polls have suggested that for a very long time, and you'd be right. But there's a few reasons why some, and I emphasise some, Conservative MPs seem to be panicking now. The last few weeks have been really bad for the Conservative Party. You had Lee Anderson joining the Reform Party. You had the row over Frank Hester, mega Conservative donor. But you also had the budget failing to shift the opinion polls, the public opinion landscape.
I think it's because people's minds are made up on the Tories. Like, it's over. Like, they've cut national insurance. I think they're going to try and cut income tax soon. It's not working because people don't feel the benefits. They've lost trust, and it's very hard to heal broken trust.
At all, despite a fairly hefty cut to national insurance. And you've also...
Because that cut to national insurance, like, it doesn't matter that much because you'll be paying more in income tax, so you'll feel it later.
Got Conservative MPs preparing for local elections, council elections, police and crime commissioners elections all across England and Wales in May. And I'm told by Conservative MPs that as they've begun to campaign for their local councillors, a lot of them have been really taken aback by what members of the public seem to think of their party, but also seem to think of Rishi Sunak.
It's a harsh reality check, that.
Stings, doesn't it?
That one's a harsh reality check they're going to get on the doorstep.
Now, I don't think there's going to be a change anytime soon. The number of Conservative MPs who think it would be utterly absurd to change leader again is still far outnumbering the number who are looking at a change.
But the thing is that it doesn't take many to trigger a vote of no confidence, because even if you win the dreaded vote of no confidence, it doesn't help, because it still means people don't have confidence in you. That's why you don't win those. Not really. Theresa May won it. She won her vote of no confidence, and then she left shortly after. Because it's not good. If there's any kind of vote of no confidence in you, it's not good.
But let's see what happens in those local elections in May, because there are some Conservative MPs who now think that might be a moment where they look again at changing leader.
That's true. So we'll have a moment's silence for the Conservative Party, because I think it's looking like a done deal. It's looking like their time is coming to an end, at least in governing the UK, and you love to see it. So a small moment's silence. There we go. We keep going.
October, November give the time for economic upturn if that's what happens. Is that where you're at?
Yes, I think we're going to see that. I mean, we know inflation's falling. We know it will fall further. We know that we'll then see rates coming down. We know that people will start to feel better. They've had 2 tax cuts that they'll start to notice. And
2 tax cuts that have made no impact on the opinion polls. No one's talking about them.
So it will give us a chance, if my colleagues would shut up for 10 minutes, to be able to show that it's not a referendum on the government, it's a choice between a Conservative government and a Labour government, and this Labour Party doesn't have any clear alternatives. This
is what they're going to do, is they're going to try and pretend like, you know, their plan is working, the green shoots of recovery, classic Tory ploy, as Morehouse says, and they're going to say, oh, we've got green shoots of recovery, come out of recession, come out from COVID, we come out from Ukraine, and we're looking a lot better now as we come into the general election. What's Labour got? No plan. That's going to be their argument, their attack line. Will it land? I don't think so, because the Tory plan isn't working. That's the problem. I think people do want to change, and they don't care what that kind of change is. I think that's what we're witnessing now. You know, this whole argument is making, I wish if my colleagues would shut up for 10 minutes. It's clearly him saying we need to stop the infighting. He just said it in a very condescending way, which I don't think will help.
On Rwanda, it doesn't have any clear alternatives on the economy.
I mean, there is a clear alternative to Rwanda, which is just process the damn claims.
This is the most...
That's true.
It is, yeah. But it's an opposition. It's an opposition that is almost scared for there to be clear blue water.
It's weird they have a Tory MP here and not a Labour one. They have, I think she's from the Greens.
We need to see a change, and we need to see something bolder in number 10, and that isn't currently Keir Starmer. But after an election, potentially Green MPs can have a good influence on at least a Labour government.
Green MPs, plural, that's bold. I think, I don't know if they'll even get one with Caroline Lucas stepping down. But this is my favourite clip. I love this.
I didn't say I'm not going to compare him because he's the Prime Minister, but what I do like, my favourite football manager is Roy Hodgson, because
Now, that's a sackable offence. You have many good managers, as I mentioned during the stream, many good managers. Your favourite manager being Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson, the man who fumbled the Euros and got England to lose against Iceland. That's your favourite manager. That to me means that this man is not fit for office.
As a Fulham fan, being brought up lifelong thanks to my grandmother's indoctrination, he gave me the best days ever when I went to the Europa League final. So,
but do you think you got quite annoyed at the weekend, because I've seen the reports about your WhatsApps. There's a little bit of swearing, so I can't. You were saying you're
only one
nervous laugh.
Well,
Swear
we're
word, which is
bored
a
of
miracle
it.
for me.
Bored of the psychodrama.
Yeah.
You said you're really tired of it. So all this talk about changing manager, what's your message to colleagues?
My message is simple. When I go out door knocking in Stoke-on-Trent, North Kidsgrove and talk, people are talking about potholes, people are talking about NHS, they're talking about schools, they're talking about the levelling up investment with some projects which have sadly not been able to get off the ground as quickly as I'd like them.
Yeah, you haven't spent 90% of the levelling up money. Like, this is an abject failure.
To have done. They're talking about what they want to see in terms of new skilled jobs. They want to see their high streets rejuvenated. They are not interested in what is a Westminster bubble story. And what they will do, if we enter this psychodrama even further, if we even entertain the idea of an leadership contest, believe me, the voters will tune back in to say, you may not give us an election within 6 weeks, but we promise you, we'll kick you out, and we'll kick you out hard.
Okay.
And we'll
I think that promise has been already made, big man, because we're going to look at the polls in a minute. It's not looking good for you, G. It's not looking good.
will be not just relegated to Championship, will be relegated to League Two, will be below 100 MPs. For any colleague who seems to think that things can't get worse, believe me, it can and it will. So shut up.
I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing below 100 MPs. I'm hearing you're going to be relegated to League Two. I'm enjoying these things. These are good things. Stop trying to tempt us with a good time here.
Up and put up.
Oof.
What do you think, Jess?
I mean, I'm glad you didn't ask me the question about who I'd compare
I
any
wasn't
leader
going
to a football manager.
I know you well enough to know that
I
would
couldn't
be
name a football manager.
That would not work.
But with regards to the psychodrama in the Conservative Party, you know, the truth is I used to think that Penny would be quite an admirable challenger.
So this is what you call a bit of an astute move there. You know, name the challenger you kind of want, especially when all the rumours around more than becoming, you know, wanting to be Tory party leader. Her camp is saying that's not true, and so she's had a lot of briefings against her, trying to portray her as being disloyal.
She's a woman I quite like and respect, and I think she's quite a good performer. But even with that said, the idea that the Conservatives could replace the leader and, as Jonathan says, not get... I mean, they would be put into, you know, the Vauxhall Conference. Is that a low league in...
Well done.
I'm struggling through with my football related...
I don't think it matters if they change leader or not, to be honest with you. This is a complete circus at the moment. This is Arkham Asylum. Like, a change to the head of the asylum doesn't make that much of a difference. That's why I don't think it's gonna. Yeah, maybe he's, you know, maybe Gullis is scared of, you know, where his status will be in the Tory party if they change leader again. Maybe he thinks that, you know, if they change leader, there's more chance for an election happening, and, you know, he'll be off the gravy train. I don't know. But, you know, this argument of, the Tories can't change leader again is like, after you change from Liz Truss, I don't think it matters at that point, because I don't think anyone's going to care that much, because people's minds are made up on the Tories. I think leadership contest wouldn't help. You know, maybe changing leader would actually help them, because Sunak, he's very much out of touch. He's a poor communicator. His team sucks. There's not many positives of keeping Rishi Sunak in, to be honest with you.
Read in a newspaper of a very small minority of Conservative MPs talking about trying to replace the current Prime Minister and leader of the Conservative Party, so replace Rishi Sunak with someone else. I wanted a quick word about what you thought of that.
If you think about what's happened with the Westminster government over the last 13 years and the number of changes of leadership there have been, and everything that the panel has said today about austerity and about low police numbers that this gentleman raised, and the fact that the health service is on its knees, and the fact that the public transport system doesn't work, and the fact that we've got local authorities declaring bankruptcy, yeah, sure, let's have another leadership election. I think we need to look at this. If you look at their track record, it's not a leadership issue. It's the whole party, and they have to go.
That's it. And I think if the voters kind of call on to that it's the whole party. The whole party is rotten. Then I think we'll be in a much better place, because it wouldn't matter at that point who the leader is. We've seen that under Boris Johnson. Did things change? No. Under Liz Truss, did things change? Yeah, for the worse. Under Sunak, what have we got? Not much. Under Theresa May, it was bad. Under David Cameron, it was bad. Like this is not a leadership problem. This is an ideological problem. This is at the heart of the Conservative Party. It's rotten, full of bad ideals and corrupt individuals. That's who they are. Sunak will call general. I think we've mentioned this before. One of his allies saying people should be careful what they wish for. If they don't want an election, they should stop messing about, which is great. a bit more?
Well, the economy is turning the corner, the government's getting closer to sending flights off to Rwanda, and this is the year where Britain apparently could bounce back. That was what Rishi Sunak had to say today on a visit to Warwickshire as he tries to reboot his stuttering premiership again. The problem he's got, the country isn't listening and his party isn't either. As the PM tries to get back on with the job, back in Westminster, his MPs are consumed by the ongoing Tory psychodrama around Rishi Sunak's leadership. One former Cabinet Minister told me today the PM was at a tipping point, having lost command and control of his party. Another, who wants to change leader, told me the situation was unsustainable, while a supportive Tory grandee said he thinks the PM will hang on, but there are painful weeks ahead. If you find it all a bit confusing, it's because it is. The party's become ungovernable, split into factions and thrashing around as MPs stare down.
This is the way she describes this is like an epic tale, some sort of really fantastical story.
Down the barrel of a potential election wipeout, walk into the gunfire or try to change general. Most MPs...
It's a bloody election. Like, this is not World War II. Like, run into the gunfire and on whatever. This isn't Metal Gear.
Would probably rather stick, not twist. But that doesn't mean the Prime Minister won't face a confidence vote in the coming months if 50-plus MPs decide they want him gone. Rebels admit they are some way off that threshold, but what everyone can agree on is that the local elections on May the 2nd are fast turning into a critical test for an embattled Prime Minister.
Whoever wrote that should get a raise, but they need to go write like World War II stories or something. But I think his allies know it's almost over, that it's going to come to an end if he's not careful. I can see him hobbling to a general election, to be honest. I can see him not being deposed, because there's always that threat of, I'll just call a general then. Which he can do. If the Tories decide to get rid of him, as Prime Minister, he can call a general election. A Tory leadership contest can take a matter of weeks, so I guess the new Prime Minister could get rid of cancel it maybe? I don't even know. If Sunak, if they trigger a leadership contest in Sunak, and Sunak says, cool, I'm gonna trigger a general election, which he can do now. He doesn't need the votes of Parliament because they got rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act. Boris Johnson did. I wonder what even happens at that point. Would the new leader be able to cancel it? Because at most they would be there for about 5 weeks. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, the possibility of that, I think. And yeah, last one.
You've been over in
last video.
Westminster today talking to MPs, as have I. What are you hearing?
So I've been over in the lobbies for about 6 hours. What you're getting today is despair, uncertainty, a lack of a plan, a kind of resignation about the political situation of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. But last week, there was something especially toxic in the air. There was something really febrile. There was a mood around for something quite radical. And then Rishi Sunak made clear that the local elections were just going to be the only elections to be held on May the 2nd. And although we've had all these talk over the weekend of, plots involving Penny Mordaunt, which I think mostly were hostile briefings done to her rather than things that anybody with her best interests were putting out there, it doesn't feel today like, having had the early election taken off the table, anybody that I talked to in the Tory party over the last few hours particularly knows what to do other than it is incredibly bad. So there are headless chickens, there are people despairing, but is there a plan? Is there a plot?
I mean,
it's not clear.
Yeah, and this sort of idea about it being confusing, because you speak to different people and everyone will agree it's awful, but they're not sure what to do next.
That's one of the problems you run into when you have a leadership problem. It's, we can get rid of the leader, but we don't really know what to do after that. And I think that's the problem the Tories have run into, because they have a load of kind of C-tier candidates they can get in, a bunch of C-tier politicians with fourth-rate ideals.
A lot of people are talking about May the 2nd now as a real danger point for the Prime Minister. Is that what you've picked up as well today?
Oh, absolutely. Nobody thinks it's going to get any better. And we had a really...
That's mad. No one thinks it will get better. They're not going to replace him, though, because they don't know who to replace him with, but no one thinks it's going to get better from here.
Weird spectacle. Yesterday, Downing Street issued a 2,600-word press release about a speech to be given by the Prime Minister this morning about economic policy, his first since the budget. Rishi Sunak stood up, and it lasted 6 minutes, 40 seconds, most of it a repeat of things he'd said before. Downing Street really struggles to land messages. Downing Street and Rishi Sunak struggle to change the weather, and that's why if things don't improve and things get worse and
they can't, what are they going to do to improve things? Like, the economy doesn't just improve on its own. You have to have actual policies to help the economy improve. How are things going to improve?
we get to those local elections on May the 2nd and they are as bad as MPs expect, yes, there'll be more of this, but to what end? Nobody seems sure, nobody seems to know where to go. There were lots of people coming out wanting even today it to be May, even though the Prime Minister's ruled it out. Some of them just want the pain to end.
And
they just want the pain to end. I think some of these MPs just want an end to... because they're going to stand down at the election anyways. I think they just want to be able to stand down with some dignity, I think.
It's going to be...
however dignified you can be as a Tory MP.
Really unclear, and I wonder whether you could get to a confidence vote by accident rather than design because of the febrile nature of the party. I mean, what's clear is when we were, you know, covering Boris Johnson, there was organisation. This is just party chaos, isn't it?
That's right. The question is, can it really stretch on to October or November? That's where, when you look at people in the eyes, they can't quite say yes. The trigger for a confidence vote is low. It's much less than half the party. You can see that happening. But to what end? People aren't sure.
That's what I mean. They don't know who to put in. I don't think it's as bad as when Boris Johnson was there, because Boris Johnson caused absolute chaos. When Boris Johnson was just like, oh yeah, this thing didn't happen, and all the Tory MPs would come out and say, oh yeah, this thing didn't happen. And then it turns out the thing did happen, and then Boris Johnson goes, oh, I didn't know about it. And they will argue, oh yeah, it happened, but Boris Johnson didn't know. And then it turns out he did know. And then they will have to argue, oh, it's not a big deal, when it was, especially the Pincher stuff was a really big deal. And that was the one that I think that sunk him in the end. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about that situation under Boris Johnson. And I think with Sunak, they don't know who to replace him with. They're not sure about going for another leadership contest, especially being fairly close to a general election. They're not sure on the optics. They're not sure on who to replace him with. So it's kind of one of those things where they're happy to go on with it being trash rather than it being a complete Armageddon, I guess. Or a Starmageddon, as people have coined it, which sounds like the coolest thing ever. But yeah, you can see Labour, you know, over 20 points ahead of the Tories. But this is where the Tories will feel more fear, I think. Reform UK on 15 points. 15 points. This is where I think they'll be nervous. Because Reform UK could be the ones to replace the Tory party as kind of the right wing of UK politics. The Tories obviously have the infrastructure, they've got the big money and things like that, but Reform UK have a much... I think they appeal much more to working class people than the Tories do. And they also have, if Farage comes back, a guy who actually has some charisma and that some people actually like him. Instead of Rishi Sunak, who is out of touch and appears out of touch. You have Nigel Farage, who is out of touch but doesn't appear as out of touch as Sunak does, or most kind of British MPs do, to be honest. I think there's one or two more things I want to go over. It was this one, yep, Scott Benton. Scott Benton was the one who said, yeah, I think he effectively said, yeah, I'll be corrupt for money. Has resigned as an MP with immediate effect, triggering a by-election. So it was chances were he was going to be face a recall petition and he would have faced a by-election. So instead he just kind of left. He says, it's with a heavy heart that I have written to the Chancellor this morning to tender my resignation as your MP. Why you'd write to the Chancellor instead of the Prime Minister, I don't know. Benton had a majority of 3,690, so I think that's a decent majority. And yeah, he's done. He's cooked. So you'll have to see it. Another one bites the dust. But that's another by-election for Sunak to worry about. And we don't know when the by-election date is going to be. And it's really a waste of taxpayers' money when you think about it, in a sense of they're going to have a by-election, and then in the general election, they're going to have another election, which is going to cost money. But, you know, people do deserve to have a representative, so you have to do it. But it's just kind of more of a waste for the Tories to just not call a general election. just on the date of that by-election, I guess, and just get this over with. But it's not in the Tories' interest to call an early election. That's why I never understood why people kept saying it when the polls were consistently against the Tories. Like, should they have called the election when they were on 24 points, on 15 points? Maybe they could have called it in 2022. Is that the argument that people are going to make? Because the Tories have been consistently polling well below Labour by around 20 odd points. So the argument of the Tories calling an election much earlier on just doesn't make any sense, and didn't make any sense at the time. But those people have, apparently have facts and logic and all sorts of other kind of mystic powers that I don't understand. But I think it's over for the Tories. Like, they're not even polling that far off the Lib Dems and the Greens, to be honest with you. They're within 10 points of the Lib Dems and the Greens. And they're within about 5 points of Reform UK. Sorry, is it Reform UK? Yeah, Reform UK. And that's Reform UK without Nigel Farage, without the big hitter. That's them with Richard Tice, who's, a bit of a clown, who is, who looks out of touch. He can't string an argument together. Talks about, he's not going to privatise the NHS, but they're going to use more private organisations and charities, which is basically privatisation, because you're giving that money to the charities and to the private orgs rather than to the NHS. It doesn't make sense, but, that's who they're losing to, a bunch of frauds. I would love to see the Tories. I don't know, if you see the Tories gone, if they're replaced by Reform UK, that's a scary thought. But, some people want to see the annihilation of the Tories, but they haven't really thought about what's going to come next. And that's the big fear. What comes after the Tories are gotten rid of? Because, we've seen it in other countries, the far right is on the rise. And when the major parties don't do what people need them to do, you do see kind of populism on the rise, and that's where things get nervy. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Rishi Sunak's Cooked Part 2. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.